Well, you could still have cookouts at your house or something.
Yeah, I could do that, but it's like, for what purpose, you know? I guess that's it. More, I guess, well, we won't miss some of those nice summer weekends at the lake that we normally miss in September, so.
I suppose. Hopefully it stays nice through September.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Hope it's not like last year.
Jesse,
Hey, Robert.
This is Commissioner Breitling. I'm on the telephone in my office.
Why do I come in as guest all the time from when I sign in here in the office? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea, but I see Mr. Schmaltz is on our meeting here.
Well, there you go. Mr. Schmaltz might be able to stop down and help me out between meetings.
I think it's because you're on a personal laptop.
Okay. Well, the county doesn't issue me one that I can take home.
I'll talk to the commission about that.
That was good. Yeah.
You know, but when I get on other meetings on my laptop, it's fine. It's just when I get on in this office, I'm signed up as guest, and it's 2:00. I better let the meeting start. So sounds like a personal issue to me, but okay.
I'm on my computer, on my own, because there's no camera.
Or microphone.
Or microphone. You could join on your phone.
Well, that kind of goes back to what I was saying, doesn't it, Ken? We have computers at our stations that aren't good for anything. Who do I talk to about that, Ken?
I wouldn't put it in those terms exactly, but.
I emailed the agenda to the commissioner, Sheriff.
Yeah, I had sent it out to them, actually. I just forgot to include
you. You forgot to include me, the most important person of the whole group. No, I'm kidding.
Exactly, and I was kind of afraid to admit it, so.
That's all good.
Are we waiting for anyone else? Is Mary on?
Mary went to get her cell phone to use.
Okay.
So Mary's in the office?
No.
Oh.
She's not next door to me.
She's probably at home. Maybe she's having issues with her Surface or her computer or something.
Yeah, she is.
She's here?
She is. Yeah.
Wow.
Woo-hoo. All right.
Shall I wait for her to hop on?
Do you want me to go ask?
Why don't I just put my phone on speaker and she can hear us?
Yeah.
Well, she said she's got it.
You can hear us. I can hear you.
So Commissioner Peterson, quick question for you. Are you using a private computer?
I'm using my phone, but yeah, I use my computer hasn't left that place in 8 years.
Okay.
And I was using my iPad instead of my phone until Terry updated my mail, and now I can't use my iPad.
Technology is wonderful.
Sure. While we're waiting to begin, will the new body cameras be integrated into the whole car system? Do they broadcast to the car, or do they broadcast someplace else?
Yes, I do. I have both, Mary. Let me bring it over. Well, there's
Do they go to the
two
car?
numbers you have to have.
Just stand like
You have
that.
to dial 1701.
To answer your question, Commissioner Pollock, it just goes to the camera on that the person's wearing, and then when they come back to the office or their docking station, it downloads from the way that we understand it.
And is that an automatic transfer, or do they have to put it into something?
You have to put it into the docking station, I believe, for it to work. And if Michelle, if I'm saying anything different, please let me know, but I think you have to put it in the docking station and then it downloads.
That is correct.
So do you have to charge those every day?
Yeah, I'm guessing we'll have to, because I'm guessing if I remember correctly, I think the battery life was between 8 and 10 hours. Is that right, Michelle?
Yeah,
Michelle,
it all depends how long you're using it for. But yeah, it's about 10 hours battery life. They do have a component where it can also be charged in the squad. But not
So
up.
then it just have enough memory to hold multiple days.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many recording hours. Well, I suppose it would be the 8 or 10 probably, that it would be able to record, but, and then how many days does it hold it for, Michelle, before it starts recycling?
You know, that I don't know. Through policy, that can be addressed. When we write the policy for the cameras, we'd put a provision in there on the deadline for upload. It would probably be something similar that we use now with Arbitrator.
Yeah, we have to, Commissioner Pollock, we have to, once we're able to get the equipment and purchase it and stuff, we have to do some training and write some policy on it before we can even implement it, of course, because it's something new, not that we have in policy right now, so.
It looks like Mary and Dewey are on their landlines, so if that's not correct, somebody say something.
I am, and I believe Mary is too.
Yes,
Right.
Commissioner Breitling got me on, so.
I'm excited you're here in the building. Woohoo!
Yay.
Dwayne, you're eyeing for my job.
I don't think so.
All right, well, Mr. Chair, would you like me to begin?
Yes, go ahead, please.
All right. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, we'll start our rotational meeting then. As you can see, I provided everyone with an agenda, and then I also sent everyone a picture of our new decals on our squad car, which we'll talk about in a little bit here, but just making sure that everyone got the agenda. And with that, I'll just kick it off. And the first item on there is the budget update. So just kind of updating everyone on where we currently are. We've expended 55.17% so far, and normally at this time of year, or where we should be, is around 57.39. So we're actually doing pretty good. We're 2% below right now. Last year at this time, I think we were a little bit over where we'd want to be. So we're looking pretty good right now. Knock on wood. Hopefully nothing major happens. Moving on to our hiring update. Currently, we have 7 full-time positions available. We've had somewhat of a revolving door lately where we get a couple people hired and then a couple people leave. So we haven't really been able to make up those 7 positions. Those 5 to 7 positions is kind of where we've been sitting lately. So, but we continue to push through in our hiring process. It's a pretty regular process at this point, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get down to investigations. But 7 full-time positions available at this time. There's 1 part-time available, and then 4 roster positions available. So
what is a roster position?
Commissioner Breitling, a roster position is a somewhat what you could kind of classify as a fill-in position. It's positions that we have sitting out there, and if we need to fill a shift on a Friday night or a Saturday night, there are people that we can call on to come in and fill in a few hours here and there for us. So they don't get any benefits, but they simply just get paid. And a lot of the people that are on there are people that have worked here in the past and have began new employment at different workplaces, and then they want to keep in touch with the jail or still work at the jail here and there and make some extra money. So that's what those positions are. Sometimes we get some college kids that pick them up and just work on the weekends while they're going to college, things like that. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Sheriff, quick question. Didn't you have a point in time here in the last couple of months where you were at or above double digits on open positions, particularly in the jail? So are we looking at a little bit of an improvement over the last couple of months?
Yep, we are. We were between that 12 to 15 mark for a little while. So we have made up some ground, and we actually have a pretty steady, pretty steady listing of candidates or people that have been applying with us. Where we've been running into some problems is that, as you can see on the bottom or underneath those, on the agenda there, underneath those items that I've already talked about on the polygraphs, we're at about a 32% failure rate. And so that's where some people are washing out in our polygraph procedure. So, and that's kind of one of the later parts of our process, so to speak, our background process. And we've had people sit in those things, and halfway through they just say they can't do it anymore and they walk out. So that's where we're experiencing some failure. And then of course, because our process takes a little while, because backgrounds, it's not anything we can get done in 1 or 2 days. Sometimes while we're conducting the background or the person's going through the background process, they get hired by someone else because they might be, they may have applied with 2 or 3 other agencies. So word of mouth continues to be our best recruiting tool, but some of the advertisements that we've been doing as well have been helping in kind of closing or closing that gap from what you had said, Robert, where we were in the double digits and now down to the single digits. So, any questions on the hiring update from anyone?
Sheriff Johnner, this is Commissioner Brightling again. Is your polygraph examiner in-house, or is it someone we use from somewhere else?
Commissioner Brightling, that's an excellent question. It's someone that we use from somewhere else. Ori Oxendale is her name, and she works for the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in Minnesota. And she does those for us currently. We're actually exploring the possibility of getting our own in-house polygraph examiner in the future. I think as our process continues here, and it's a continual revolving door of applicants and people leaving and people that we need to hire, it's probably going to make sense in the future fiscally to maybe send our own person to the school and get the equipment to where we can just do them ourselves. Plus it will possibly help us with our investigations going forward. A lot of times that polygraph isn't admissible in court, but it helps us narrow down some suspects and figure a few things out in our investigation. So Captain Burris, who's online with us here, he's made that proposal this year to add a polygraph examiner. So I think over the next couple of years, we'll look at that and possibly maybe bring that person on, and it will save us money in the long run. Because I think it's, if I remember correctly, Michelle, is it $200 per polygraph?
$250.
$250. So that's what we get charged, $250 per polygraph. So with the amount of people that we've been interviewing for positions, it might be more fiscally responsible to bring another person on and get them certified. So we'll definitely look at that in the future.
Sheriff, do you need to lower your standards?
Well, I don't think that we want to do that. Certainly we have done a few things standard-wise. We aren't doing a physical agility test right now. In the past, we had been, and that was keeping some people from applying with us. And until we get our numbers a little lower, we're not doing a physical agility testing right now. We are still doing a physical, of course, but hopefully we don't have to we certainly don't want to lower our standards as far as criminal activity, or anything of that nature. So hopefully we don't get to that point.
Is that where the failures on the polygraph occur, is related to previous illegal activity?
Yep. People are nervous about talking about something they did in the past. In fact, on some of them, we've had to look into potentially charges against the person, based on what they told us in there. So it definitely is a good tool in our process. And, there for a while we weren't doing them, and we've added it, and I'm glad that we have, because, there's really in what we do and earning the public's trust and our integrity, honesty, and all that stuff, I think really relies on the process that we have in place.
Okay, so if you have a candidate who is honest with you and says, I haven't ever been charged with anything, but I've done some dumb things in the past, and, is that an automatic disqualifier?
Well, there's a lot of different things that we look at. So definitely honesty is a major component in our career, because if you're not honest, you don't have that integrity, and we find that out through the process, or it's documented in the process, then it makes it really hard for that person to testify in court going forward. And if an officer can't testify in court, it's really hard for them to be employed in this profession. So really what we're looking for, much like you said, is honesty. So we'll ask someone, we ask people if they've stolen things before. Most people have. So what we're looking for in that type of an answer is, yeah, I stole stuff, and we ask them what it is, how recent it's been. We ask people about narcotics activity, and if someone's honest with us and they told us that they smoked marijuana 5 years ago, they tried it at a party or something, as long as they're honest with us, and it's been quite a while ago, that's not really a grounds for dismissal. But of course, if they tell us that they used methamphetamine or cocaine or something like that, then more than likely that would be. So it kind of depends on the activity, how recent it was, and if they're honest with us about it or not.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, moving on to the next item there, we have patrol, riot patrol listed on there, and I sent everyone a email with one of our newer trucks that we just got outfitted with our new decals. So we're starting to get those in. Of course, we're doing them through attrition, much like Chair Peterson asked a while back when I mentioned that we were going to be getting new decals on our vehicles. We're certainly doing it through attrition, not doing a whole reclassification of our fleet. So it'll take a little while for all of our cars to look the same, 2, 3, 4 years, depending on mileage and things like that. But we're excited about the new change. I think it looks pretty nice. And in addition to what you see on the side of the vehicle, there's now a number on top of the vehicles, which you can't see from that photo. And the reason that we're putting a number on top now, a vehicle number, is because of the drones. When we're flying the drones and we're flying them over our perimeters that we have set up with our vehicles, it's easy for the command post and the person flying the drone now to identify what person would be associated with that vehicle based off of the number that's marked on top of their vehicle. So that's something new that we've added to our decaling process, and will be very helpful in critical incidences going forward. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think of the new decals. Good or bad. Robert sent me his opinion. He thought it was the nicest thing he ever saw before, and asked me how I designed it and all that stuff. I'm just teasing. I appreciated your feedback, Robert.
And is that color silver?
Yep, the color is silver now. So, yep.
Well, I think
they're pretty sporty.
Fine. You misspelled sheriff, though.
What's that?
You misspelled sheriff on the truck.
No, did we?
And Cass.
Don't give me a heart attack. I looked at it and I didn't notice that. So if it is, then yeah. So anyways, yeah, I think it'll be, we haven't changed our decals for quite a while, or our cars. So as you see, it's on one of our new trucks that we got, which I had mentioned to you guys as far as going forward, adding a few new trucks to our fleet so that we have that better response capability during the winter. And so, the trucks, they look pretty nice. They're actually cheaper than the Explorers that we had before. So we saved a little money going with the trucks. You know, as far as fuel costs, you know, I don't know. Maybe the truck will be a little bit more, maybe, but they do have where the motor shuts down to 4 cylinders when they're not, you know, when they're just being driven normally. So we'll see how that affects that. I don't think it'll be too much different because the Explorers weren't that great on gas anyway. So.
Well, they have a big tank, so.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Sheriff, quick question for you there.
Yeah.
You know, I assume those are the half-ton pickups, and you know, through the budget hearings, we had the conversation that the DES has the emergency response trailer or mobile command trailer that could be used if you needed it. Is 1,500 enough to pull that if needed, or could I'm guessing a 1,500 couldn't push a plow, but could it pull the sled trailer in the winter?
Well, it wouldn't be able to pull that trailer that you're talking about as far as the DES command trailer, but that actually comes with a truck, so there's a truck hooked up to that.
Okay.
So we don't need to pull that with any of ours. As far as the other trailers that we have, it would be able to pull those except for the airboats, but the airboats are also hooked up to the 3/4 ton trucks. So the airboats and the 3/4 ton trucks were, of course, the vehicles that the state bought us, and they're always hooked up, ready to go. So those are kind of a different animal, so to speak. But as far as our other trailers, they'll be able to pull those. And of course, we did get 2 3/4 tons, if you remember correctly. But we had to get those because those are the vehicles that transfer our weight scales around. And like I mentioned in the commission meeting, when we talked about vehicles, that those 1,500s that we're using our expeditions actually to haul our scales around now are actually illegal to do so because the scales are more weight than what those vehicles can handle. So we've actually been doing that. You know, you're supposed to be doing it with a 3/4 ton, and we've been using the expedition in 1,500. So we did get those 2 new 3/4 tons, and those will be in service soon, and then we can put our weight scales in those, and then we'll be legal as well. So kind of tough to pull people over when we're doing things weight-wise that we're not supposed to be doing. So, yep. Any questions on vehicles at all? Yeah, then I was just going to mention, and I've talked with or visited with Mary about this, but I just kind of wanted to bring everyone else up to speed on some city contracting issues, so to speak, I would say. We have the city of Horace that contracts with us, the city of Kindred, Mapleton, and Castleton. Harwood recently reached out to us, and they were looking or interested in possibly contracting with the county for law enforcement services. And then if you remember correctly, Horace wanted to add 2 more people. So we did not add 2 more people to the Horace contract, and we did not, at this time, Harwood's not going to jump on and contracting with us. But as these cities grow, they're going to be looking for those services, I think, in the future. And so we don't need to necessarily or talk about it today, but I just wanted to make you aware that going forward, I think we might have a few more cities that are potentially interested in contracting with the county for law enforcement services. And then both the city of Horace and Castleton have been reaching out to us. The city of Horace is going to be making a new city hall or adding on to their city hall. And they've been somewhat asking us about office space in their city hall. Same with Castleton. And I told them at this time, it probably wouldn't be anything that the county would pay for. But certainly we would like to have office space out there since we're contracting with them. So just going forward in the future is probably going to be some things that come up with some city contracts that we'll probably want to discuss at a later date going forward for possibly 2021.
So Sheriff, why don't you just remind everybody again how our contracts typically run? I think they're very generous to the communities.
Sure, Commissioner Shirlene, they are. I think the communities are getting a really good deal. Of course, we enjoy our partnerships with all of our communities. It's nice if we have someone tied into those communities and we're working with them right off the bat and being proactive as opposed to them having issues or problems and then us having to respond to them and be reactive. So it's always good to have people in those communities, especially the bigger ones, where we can work on those problems on the front end with them. Typically, how it works in general, without getting down to pennies, so to speak, is that the city pays for their salary and benefits, and the county pays for the equipment that we use out there. So it's a cost share, of course, between Cass County government and those cities that we work with. And then, of course, as we go forward here, if you talk about, Horace has 2 full-time deputies down there, or a contract for 2 full-time individuals. If they go to 4, obviously that's going to cost both their city money and then also the county money. So that's something that we'll probably want to look at in the future. But that's how the cost share works between the county government and the cities. So it might be something that we look at going forward and how we do that. But we definitely like our partnerships with those towns, and it kind of benefits both their city, of course, because they're not paying as much, and then it benefits us because we have people in those cities already and a little extra staff to deal with the problems that we have in those communities. Commissioner Sherling, is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yep, I think so. And how much does it cost to outfit one officer?
Well, that's, as you know, is gradually going up, but to Michelle would probably have that. I can tell you, to outfit one vehicle, purchasing the vehicle, putting all the equipment in there, striping it, putting the lights on it, and so on and so forth, is about, from 65 to 70,000 in there for one vehicle. So, and that's the computer, the cage, the striping, all the equipment that goes in it, which is the radar, the computer, the lights. One of the biggest costs is that radio system in the computer to hook into dispatch. So, at roughly about 65,000 to 70,000 as far as the personal equipment that the deputy needs, like the duty belt, the firearm, uniform. Do you have that, Michelle, offhand, or do you know that offhand?
I would say weapon, taser, and everything is going to be about $3,500. That includes uniforms, badges, everything.
And so how often would we rotate in a new vehicle for someone?
That kind of varies, Commissioner Sherling. That kind of varies. It somewhat depends on a few factors. Obviously, mileage is a big thing. Typically, we've been running our vehicles up to around, right over 100,000, somewhere around 100,000 to 120,000. The reason that I said it kind of varies, it depends on where that deputy, what community they're assigned to. So each of our deputies have a community that they work with through our adopted community program. And so a deputy that has the city of Tower City and goes to their city council meetings and their fire meetings is typically going to get a few more miles on than the person that has Harwood for a community, because they have to drive longer distances. And then, of course, we've got our deputies who are out in the schools. So we have a deputy that drives to Tower City every day, and that person tends to put on a few more miles because they're going back and forth to Tower City every day. So, it kind of varies.
Let's use Horace as an example. How often do we rotate those vehicles in?
Probably about 4 to 5 years is about the average for a vehicle that we would rotate out of there.
Okay.
So, Sheriff, it kind of sounds to me like you're going to have, at some point, you're going to have to recoup some of the vehicle costs for your policing contracts as well.
Yeah, Commissioner Pollock, we could figure it out specifically and let you know a few more details on as far as, the cost sharing and things like that. But right now it's pretty close with us doing the equipment and the cities doing the salary and benefits. We're pretty close to about 50-50 exchange, as far as the, Cass County government providing 50% of the funding to have that law enforcement function in that community, and then that city paying the other 50%. So they're definitely getting a pretty good deal than if they had their own, which is why they want to go with us.
Yeah, well, but I think you're overestimating the vehicle cost. That $65,000, the initial cost, you know, that's spread out over 4 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have the ongoing maintenance costs and operational costs of the vehicle. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think that it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that going forward, we should be thinking about restructuring those contracts.
Yeah, we can definitely look at it, and Mary and I have been talking about it a little bit. You know, we certainly want to help them out, and like I said, be able to be in those communities. I don't know, at some point, I'm guessing Horace may want to start their own police department, but I think they know right now that it would be a lot more money for them to do so as to what they're getting now. You know, for what they're getting now, they'd probably only be able to put one person in down there if they have their own, whereas here they're getting two, you know?
Right.
So, and they like working with us, and I appreciate that, so. Any other
Just
questions?
a quick comment.
Yep.
Sheriff, regarding that, I want to say about 3 years ago, we did, whether we added SROs or whatever it was, but I got a number of emails from local constituents, i.e. the mayor and city commissioners, concerned about the costs of the sheriff's departments, and I encouraged them to seek their own law enforcement solution if they thought we were being too aggressive in terms of what we were charging, because they know darn well they're getting a steal of the deal. So I think that if we do raise them, we're going to get some pushback. But like I said, I'd be happy to respond the exact same way I did before. If you feel that you can do this at a more cost-effective manner, Godspeed. I think you'll quickly find out there's nothing close to the law enforcement quality, as well as the costs, especially, that you're going to get from Cass County.
Yeah, and like I said, going forward, we can definitely look at it and see how we want to proceed. So, all right, moving on to investigations, just kind of real quick. Our property crimes and fraud, still kind of at the higher end of most of the stuff that we're investigating. Our investigative division has been really, really busy, and a lot of that busyness that's been added to it, so to speak, has been the background checks that we talked about earlier through the hiring process. So much like I talked about at our last rotational meeting, those are pretty constant. And so what we've been doing with those is we've sent our investigators through background investigation school. And so now they're doing, you know, Captain Burris farms those out to them and kind of spreads them out so they each have about the same amount on top of their regular investigative caseload that they have. Along with that, of course, the investigative division handles our sex offender program. And one thing that's becoming or taking more time right now has been our computer crimes. Those and our fraud crimes take quite a bit longer to investigate. And of course, we oftentimes run into roadblocks on some technology pieces, and then also some of these crimes occurring over state lines. When we have stuff like that or involving different jurisdictions, then that gets a little tougher for us, and we end up oftentimes spending more time in doing those investigations. So, but backgrounds have definitely added to our caseload and investigations. And so we've talked over here about doing a few or having another restructuring plan, which we might look into over the next couple months, and that's just simply moving a few people around within the organization to help lighten the investigative load that they're experiencing right now as we move forward. So, and then moving on to civil warrants and court transport. Of course, our evictions, those have resumed. So we've our guys have been out doing those again now. They of course stopped for a little while with the at the direction of the state when COVID was at its height, so to speak. And then now those have resumed. We did have, I think maybe you guys saw or knew that there was supposed to be a protest against the sheriff's office for us resuming evictions. The Red River Valley Democratic Socialists group was going to conduct a protest against the sheriff's office for us carrying out evictions a few weeks back here, and that got canceled because they had a different protest that they were going to do. And I haven't heard anything going forward, but nationwide, this Democratic Socialist movement has been doing protests against different sheriff's office throughout the country, basically saying that they don't think people should be evicted from their residences. Of course, you know, that's something that, number one, is state law that the sheriff carries those out, and then number two, it's the court that is directing us to do so. So, you know, if there was going to be a protest, you think that they would maybe protest against the state or something of that nature. But I think their idea was that since we're carrying them out or following through with the court order, that they were going to protest against us. So I don't know if we'll see that in the future. Of course, it gets kind of tricky because, I mean, if a landowner who owns an apartment complex has people living there and they're not paying that person rent, and he or she can't evict them from the property, then eventually, you know, there's going to probably be more people that don't pay their rent, and this place is going to probably end up shutting down anyways because the landowner can't pay their you know, bills to the bank. So then there's going to be more people out of a residence. So I don't know. It's always a tricky thing, of course, but we're certainly doing it at the direction of the court and the law. And hopefully we don't have any protesting going forward, but certainly it's been talked about. Last year we were at 139,162. This year we're at 110,846. As far as revenues coming in from our civil process service, so we're down roughly $28,000 as far as revenue coming in. I attribute that a lot to COVID, of course, and us not doing as many paper services, things of that nature. And of course, the next line underneath there, you'll see that papers are also down, which is why that revenue is down. And then, as you can see, our warrants are actually up, and I also attribute that to COVID because, as you guys all know, we weren't putting people in jail. We were giving them PR or court dates later on down the line, and now some of those people, those court dates are coming, you know, they're coming due where people need to go into court and they're not showing up for it. So we're getting more warrants because of that. So if you look farther down here, in January we had 405 warrants that came into our office, February 383, March 324, and then April and May, that's when those court dates started getting pressed back. And you could see that the warrants went down quite a bit. And then now, if you look at July, 621, which is our highest, and that's just simply from people not showing up for court, you know, when they weren't initially taken to jail for those charges. So we've got quite a few more warrants that we're dealing with and having people go out and trying to look for these individuals and bringing them in. And then, of course, with that, then we start, you know, bringing more people to jail. So our jail numbers are also climbing, and we'll talk about that next year. But I don't know if anyone has any questions on that stuff at all, on civil process or warrants. We're always a little nervous with the evictions because those can be pretty dangerous. We've had some of our staff assaulted on those and hurt on those, and of course that's what happened up in Grand Forks with Officer Holte when he was shot and killed. They were doing an eviction, so those are a really dangerous part of our job. When our guys go out and do those, they're taking 4 or 5 people to go do them, and not only are they doing that, but they're spending a day or two beforehand doing investigation on these people to see what their backgrounds are, and just to see if they're going to have any sort of a confrontation or if this person's going to be violent, or just, you know, to learn a lot about their personality before they even go and do them. So they become pretty dangerous lately.
So Sheriff, we talked earlier about dispatch, knowing where those guys are at any given time. Is that all been resolved now?
Yes, Commissioner Sherling, and just to bring all Mr. Chair and the rest of the commissioners here, bring you guys up to speed. Our guys that go out and do those evictions, civil process and warrants, the civil process guys weren't calling in to dispatch when they would check out at address looking for someone to serve them a civil paper. And I think part of the reason is we do a lot of papers. That would add approximately, in our estimation, about 30,000 plus radio calls into dispatch if our guys were calling in on the radio. They weren't doing that, and to me, it's a huge safety issue. And so we explored a few different possibilities. I visited with Commissioner Sherling on this a few times, and Robert as well, to try to figure out how we could make it safer for our staff. And what we came up with was purchasing them, because they don't have computers in their cars, and also with Terry's help as well, purchasing them computers for their cars so they can check out when they go to an address, check out through that computer the address they're at and what it is that they're exactly working on. And then when they do that, that goes to dispatch, so the dispatchers can see where they're at and what they're doing. That way they're not clogging up the radio traffic, but we're still being, as safe as we would with anyone else. The only other option, of course, to answer those 30,000 additional radio calls would be to add more dispatch personnel, which would be quite a bit more expensive. So, I feel like we can accomplish the same thing through the use of these computers, which is quite a bit cheaper than adding staff. So we're gonna go that route in 2021, and they'll start using computers. Not only will they be able to check out and be safer that way, but they'll be able to use those computers for investigative purposes. So if they're looking for, Ken Pollock, and they don't know if he lives at this address, now they drive by and they see a vehicle there, they can run the plate through this computer and see if that's his vehicle sitting there. So it'll help with efficiency as well as safety. So that'll be a good thing going forward here that will add. And our calls for service are definitely going to jump up, because when I looked at the calls for service for what West Fargo PD does every year, there was no doubt in my mind that the Cass County Sheriff's Office does more calls for service than West Fargo PD. And when I looked at the numbers, it didn't reflect that, and that was why, is because our guys, every time they check out an address, that's a calls for service, because they're stopping there and doing an investigation. They're trying to locate someone, much like any other officer would do. That, in Fargo or West Fargo, that they're getting credit for. So you're going to see our calls for service go from about 25,000 every year to probably up to around 60,000. So, and I think Fargo PD is right around 90,000 calls for service right now. So, we're definitely gonna surpass West Fargo and be underneath Fargo a little bit. But so, anyways, does that answer your question, Commissioner Sherling?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions on that?
Commissioner Pollock speaking.
Yes.
Can't they use their phones for everything they use the computer for?
Commissioner Pollock, they would not be able to do that, I do not believe. It's probably more of a technical question for Terry, but I don't know that our phones can hook into the CAD dispatch program. Am I correct on that, Terry?
You talking about their computers?
Yeah, so Commissioner Pollock is asking about using their phones for the same thing, checking out at an address and going into dispatch through the New World system.
No, it won't. They have to have a computer.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Sheriff, real quickly, Robert here. This way of having civil process service checking in, that's also very similar, if not identical, to the way that your counterparts over in Clay County are working through dispatch, is it not?
It is, Robert. It is exactly the same. Actually, when I spoke with Sheriff Empty, and their guys were doing the same thing. They weren't calling their stuff in as well. And I think there was a way back, from a long time ago, when our guys would go out and serve civil process papers, there was kind of a perception that you're just going up, you're knocking on this person's door, and you're delivering them a paper. And it maybe wasn't as dangerous as doing a traffic stop on a vehicle. And so, that just kind of over the years, it was kind of the norm, so to speak. And then now, as we've had with the evictions and more of the civil process actions, small claims actions, people are becoming more upset when we deliver those and it's become more dangerous. So that's why we've had to make this change, for the safety of our staff. And certainly we should take credit for the work that we're doing, which wasn't being documented before in our calls for service. And so when I, like I said, when I looked at West Fargo's numbers for their calls for service, and I'm like, no, I know we're taking more calls for service and doing more than they are, or receiving, I should say, not doing more than them, but receiving more calls for service. That's where that discrepancy in the number was. So, any other questions? All right, then jumping over to the jail. Population is currently at 295, so our numbers are gradually creeping up. If everyone remembers, we were down in the underneath the 200s there for a while at the height of COVID cases that we were having in there, and we've definitely creeped up, and that's again a combination of court being fully back in session, and those are some of those warrants that are coming out and different things like that. DOCR is taking inmates still. We have to quarantine though. The individuals have to, we have to be able to let them know that that individual is not COVID positive, of course, and let them know how we know that. That person's more than likely been quarantined for a period of time. But as long as we can provide all that information, they're taking our inmates. We currently do not have any COVID positive cases. However, we're waiting quite a few test results right now. 6, possibly be up to 9 after today that we're waiting.
How long does it take to get those results?
I'm going to refer that question to Andy because he's been dealing a little bit more with that. Andy, Commissioner Sherling was wondering how long it takes to get those results.
Yeah, we've seen the average creep up to almost 5 days now. The ones that we are currently waiting on, we've got back all the way back to some that were done on Wednesday, I believe, that we're still hoping to get in today.
Thank you.
Andy, was there anything that I mentioned in there that I missed or that you wanted to add on top of what I said?
No, I just a couple of just number updates. Right now we're at 287. We're hoping that we might get a little relief from court today, but that's about what it's been like recently. Just looking at it, we've had 14 already in just since 7 o'clock this morning. We're averaging about 21 total every 24 hours, so we're ahead of the curve there as well. We did get an update. DOCR is going to be moving out, it looks like 15 or 16 people next week. So out of, I think, 21 total that we have in custody right now for the DOCR. So we'll get most of the rest of them out. It's like after that, all we'll have is just a few females and then guys that got sentenced just within the last week or so.
That sounds good. He must have had a few people get out from when I talked to Katie earlier, but that's a good thing. Anything else that anyone had questions on as far as the jail? I don't know if you have any updates or if you wanted to mention anything, Robert, as far as the expansion and the CARES Act or anything.
Sure, Sheriff, thank you. I think we'll probably dive into this a little deeper in the COVID update during the commission meeting this afternoon. But at the commission meeting 2 weeks ago, we were just about a day and a half out of the state's new funding formula of how they were going to essentially allocate CARES funds. And so the direction from the commission was to come back with a spending plan. And with really tallying up all of the potential projects to date. And so we have that. And there's, if we moved forward with every project that was discussed, we would have roughly about $3 million remaining. And I know I've had a couple of commissioners reach out to me individually, ask, okay, what is the status of the jail intake expansion at this point? Is it still needed, or where do we move forward? Everything I understand from you and Andy is absolutely it is still needed, but it's just sort of simple at this point. We don't have the funds to complete the project, and so whether the board wants to set the remaining money aside and just wait till 22 and budget for completing the project at that point, or want to look at other funding sources to move forward in 21 with the project. We're kind of in that point that based on the funds that we now understand we're going to get, we can't complete the project, so we can either set the funds aside until we have the remaining funds from somewhere else, or look for additional funds to complete it on a shorter time frame.
Robert, I thought the funds had to be spent sooner rather than later.
Commissioner Sherling, that is a change that came about when the state offered up this new allocation process that had just been rolled out a couple of days before our last commission meeting. By allocating the money on this new with this new criteria, that requirement that the funds have to be expended by December 31 of this year, that goes away. So that was a requirement under the originally that we were operating within, but that has changed.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question of Mr. Wilson. This is Commissioner Breitling.
Yes, sir.
With the payroll, peace officer payroll expenses, will Horace be applying for the money they pay for the payroll for the 2 deputies that we have down there?
Commissioner Breitling, I am not aware if they've made any reach out to that intent, but I know that I think there was a communication from Terry Trainer with the State Association to auditors and finance directors that may be very likely, and that would be within the spirit of that allocation formula. So I'd have to dig up the email again, but I know Mike forwarded me an email to that intent, I want to say within the last couple of weeks, but I don't know that we've had the specific request.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the grants on there. Our COVID grant has run out at this point. That grant for $58,008. We have like $200 left, I think Michelle told me earlier. So it's pretty much a run out at this point. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on that. And then she's going to be presenting, or we are going to be presenting you with another grant that we were able to receive for $94,125, and it's a split with us, West Fargo, and Billings County in North Dakota, and it's sponsored through the Human Trafficking Task Force, and it really deals with trauma officers and trauma, and having outlets for our officers to visit with different resources when they feel like they need to talk to someone with the different types of things and stresses that they have through this career. And so really it's a pilot project, so to speak, with our agency, Billings and West Fargo, to have some different options available in addition to the EAP, which we already have, to help officers with their mental health well-being. And so it'll be good for us. We'll be able to use it. It comes at a good time with everything going on nationwide. And, you know, I've had deputies stop in here at different times and just visit with me about everything that's going on, and, you know, perceptions of law enforcement. And, you know, for the most part, our staff is holding up really good through everything that's happened nationwide. We've got really good support in our community here, which is really a good thing. And I think it'd be tough to work in different parts of the country. And so, but it comes at a good time where there's probably some additional stressors on law enforcement officers right now, and making sure that our staff stays stays well as we move forward here, because that obviously relates into providing good services to our citizens. And so we want to make sure that we're able to do that, but at the same time looking out for the health and well-being of our staff. So let's see, going forward, I just put some things on here going forward that I wanted to talk about. You know, I want to bring everyone up to speed that I think there is some potential for some future demonstrations at the courthouse. What that has to do with really is potentially the evictions that we already talked about, but then also the individual who struck the protester or it was alleged to have protester during the protest on May 30th. That person started a few of their court appearances, and although they've already had one court appearance where the driver of the vehicle did not go to that appearance, just their attorney presented the information there for them. We did have a few people come into the courthouse and they wanted to sit in on that case. Some people we thought that might protest because the driver of the vehicle wasn't there. We didn't have any issues, but we did have some contingency plans in place. We had different people staged throughout the courthouse in case we did end up with some issues. But as we go forward and this person has their court appearances, I think that we may end up seeing some demonstrations outside the courthouse. So just wanted to make you aware of that. Kind of bring everyone up to speed on some of the conversations that I've had, some of the things that have been mailed to the office of the sheriff from different protesting groups. We've had different demands sent to us that people would like us to follow, that they want to have oversight over our office, and you know, simply how I've answered that or how I've addressed those demands, so to speak, and how I'll continue to do that is certainly we want to work with all groups. We want to work with our citizens. We want to make sure that we can provide a good law enforcement function and understand the different cultures, ethnicities, and all that stuff, and work with everyone. But as far as demands over the sheriff's office, I mean, we'll always look at what their concerns are. But, you know, I view this office as I'm elected by the people. And I don't think that I don't think the citizens of Cass County want 3 people to come in and govern their elected law enforcement office. And so I've simply just told them that this is an elected position. If they want change over the sheriff's office or they want to be able to govern the sheriff's office and how we run operations and the things that we do, that they would need to bring that to the voters of Cass County and address it that way. Otherwise, you know, this office is fair, impartial, unbiased, and will provide law enforcement functions to everyone, and will protect the Constitution and provide a good service to our citizens. But as far as anyone coming in and overseeing our office, you know, I consider my oversight to be every 4 years when I run for this office. Again, not taking into consideration that we want to work with everyone, and if there's some way we can work with people, we'll always try to do that. But as far as people having oversight and kind of running the office, that wouldn't happen. So I just wanted you all to know that we have had demands. Typically when I tell them, a lot of times the different groups don't understand the difference between the police department and the sheriff's office, and that I am elected and that the chief of police is appointed. And so typically when I tell them that and that they have to bring it to the voters, then they don't, you know, they don't press anything anymore, or they haven't visited with me anymore. So that's kind of that, I guess. One thing that I was just going to throw out to you guys, I'm sure most of you saw the commission meeting at the city of Fargo when Black Lives Matter wanted to bring up some issues with the city commission, and you know, they weren't on the agenda, so to speak, to do that, and we're told that they couldn't do it at that time. It might be just something that we all want to sit down. Certainly they can come here and visit with you guys, and but maybe we need to think in the future going ahead, you know, that they could potentially come to a commission meeting, the Cass County Commission meeting, and making sure that we're all on the same page in how we would want to handle those requests, or them being able to bring the information forward. I very much agree that we just would need to be on the agenda, much like you ask everyone else to be, and that we're treating everyone the same, but that we really have a plan in place should they come in and speak with you. But I want to make sure that we, as the sheriff's office and providing security at the courthouse, are aware of, how you guys may want to move forward with if something like that was brought towards you, and how we'd want to do that. So we can visit about that going forward at a different time, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Real quick. So I actually watched that live. What that is, it's exactly what you just said before. They don't understand the process, so they just thought they could come and show up and talk. Well, we have a public comment portion, and the city of Fargo now has taken it upon themselves to do what we've been doing for a good couple of years. So now we're in place for that if they want to come and talk. If anybody does, that's why we did that. So city of Fargo just didn't have that in place, and more importantly, when it came time to explain how to speak to them, our fair mayor didn't do a very good job, and one city commissioner tried to explain, but he didn't do a very good job either. So long story short is they didn't understand the process. Now they understand the process. So I think we're okay.
Okay, I have a question for Commissioner Peterson. Is there a time limit on the public comment?
Yeah, generally speaking, if you listen, what I try to do is I say between 2 and 3 minutes, and anything more than that, what we do is encourage you to be on the agenda, because obviously if you're bringing something up, we want the public at large to be able to comment as well. Now, you guys, may or may not agree with that, but that's sort of been my logic. If you want to talk for 5 or 10 minutes about something, we should put you on the agenda so someone else can either agree with you or disagree with you. And I think it's only fair. Plus, when we start getting to that length of conversation, that really needs to be more of a public notice thing. So I've always said 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to make sure.
This is Rick, if I may, Sheriff.
But
Chairman Peterson, one thing, I think I read this from the city or whatever, but total public speaking time was limited to 30 minutes at a meeting at the city. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, I think that's pretty close. I think it's 20 or 30, but like I said, I think if you're there, if 6 people come and talk about the same topic, that to me compounds. And again, I think the main problem was they didn't understand the process. So they felt disrespected when, I watched it live because I was curious. I watched it live and I just don't think they did a good job explaining. So I'll just stop there.
All right, thank you.
And Mr. Chair and members of the commission, my point in bringing that up was I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as us as the sheriff's office being in there and assisting, of course, with matters that may occur in there, that we're just kind of on the same page with how we want to work through those situations if we have anything. So
how is it working now?
Go ahead,
How is it working now, Commissioner Peterson, if a member of the public wants to speak and it's a virtual meeting, do they have to give you their name ahead of time to be able to speak at public comments? Otherwise, they're muted, aren't they?
No, actually, and I'll do it again today. What I do is I open it up right before we go in, after the consent agenda into the regular agenda. I can see the different phone numbers. So who's ever chairing the meeting has an access to, well, I guess you guys probably can too, see who's on the call. If there's any strange numbers, I try to make sure that I take extra time to allow anybody to comment. So what they do is just like they would in a regular meeting, I think, they'd say, "Hi, my name's Bob. I'd like to talk about, we don't have enough fish at Brewer Lake." Oh, okay. A couple minutes on that. And again, I always pause, and just like in a regular meeting, whether it's virtual or otherwise, no one ever seems to step up. So
Chad?
It's been smooth so far, yeah.
Chad, the public can't respond to that live event. It's listen only for them.
Oh, I thought you said the problem we had prior was it was open.
No, it's not. I'll explain it to you later, but it doesn't work that way.
Okay, well, we got to figure that out, Terry.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, then moving on to this last part here, I just wanted to kind of give you an update on how we, the Cass County Sheriff's Office, as our organization, is trying to be forward-thinking during this time, and different, different things that have come up as far as issues both in the community with different cultures, ethnicities, and stuff like that. So one thing that we're doing is when we have a command staff meeting this Wednesday, and that's when all of our sergeants and above meet. We do that, or try to do that once a month. We haven't been doing it monthly lately just because of the COVID stuff, but getting back into that routine. And we're kind of just working on redefining what our mission, our vision, our value statements are, so that we can refer back to those as we work through different things. And so I've asked our command staff. I want to give everyone an opportunity to have some buy-in to what those are, but eventually coming up with a redefinement of those three things. We already have a mission, vision, value statements in place. I think it's time to look at them a little bit and just see if we need to redefine them a little bit. So we're working on that currently. Of course, we've been trying to get Rick back in here. We've been pushing out information on our social media platforms, mostly Facebook, some Twitter stuff, but just really getting our policies, our procedures, how we handle different situations with use of force and different things like that, getting that stuff out so people can look at that. It gives them an idea of how we proceed through certain situations, because I'll be honest with you guys, when I watch a lot of the presentations from these groups, there's just a lot of, in my opinion, miseducation on a lot of the items. And I really think that if there's education out there and people just really understand why we're doing what we're doing, there would be maybe less of some of the issues brought forward. For example, there already is a civilian oversight committee for law enforcement in North Dakota. You know, I had mentioned it to Dave Todd when they were asking him to put together a different committee that would oversee use of force within their entities, disciplinary actions. That already exists. That is the post board. I sit on the post board. I was appointed to the post board by Attorney General Wayne Stenjum 2 years ago for a 6-year term. That board is made up of chiefs and sheriffs throughout the state of North Dakota, and then in addition to that, Attorney General staff, and then also civilian staff. There's 2 civilian members that sit on there. And so anytime that an officer that has a peace officer's license gets in trouble, has some sort of an internal review on them, that then goes to the post board after the agency is done with their internal process, and then the post board looks over that investigation and determines if the proper procedures, protocols, or any ethical policy violations or anything like that were violated. So that committee already exists. I don't think that anyone's told these groups that. So I don't think they even know about it. So I was just using that as one example of maybe where there's just not enough education out there. So we've been trying to put some of those things out on our Facebook sites to educate the public and educate some groups who might be interested in that. Of course, we did the implementation of body cameras. A lot of people were asking about that. I think that's going to help with some of these issues. And you guys probably saw that it was in the paper on Sunday. And just real quick, I wanted to mention how that was placed into the paper, because I didn't want anyone to think that I jumped the gun on announcing that we were going to get those. The city of Fargo had released that they were looking at getting body camera systems for their officers about a week or a week and a half ago or so. I think Mr. Montpleasure had noticed that article and had made contact with the forum at some point, or the forum had reached out to him. I'm not exactly sure how that went down. But in that conversation with them, it was mentioned that we were looking at getting them. So the forum reached out to me and asked me about it, and I told them that it was in our budget, but that we had the first reading and that our budget wasn't finalized at that point, and that we needed to wait until the next finalization of that in going forward here. And then after that, my intention was to do a press release on it. And so the forum called me a couple times on it, and so I had reached out to Commissioner Peterson and just mentioned if he thought it would be okay if we put it in at that time, understanding that it could still potentially be pulled, and make that known through the article. And Chad thought that was okay. So that was what I did, and so that was why it was in there. So nice to get our story out. I like to be transparent and get that information out if that's the route we're going to go. And we have had questions since that article came out. People have been sending us some emails. They've been reaching out to us, and they're curious about it. They want to know about it. So Michelle's been answering some of those questions. But it's good to get out ahead of it and get things into place and answer the public's questions or concerns. It'll only help us going forward. So that was kind of how that came about. We're going to be starting our Citizens Academy here in October. And so any of you guys interested and want to go through it, you're certainly welcome to do that. I know Commissioner Peterson has attended it in the past. I think it really helps people get a good view or a good idea of what the Sheriff's Office is about, our values, our missions, much of those things I've already mentioned, our vision, how we work together with the community, and really understand our agency, because I think there's a lot of citizens who don't necessarily know the differences between the Sheriff's Office and the police departments and what we do, and I think it's really good to get that information out and educate the public. So we'll be starting that. We're going to send out a press release on that over the next couple of days, and we'll start taking applications. We'll have to do a background process, of course, and hopefully look to start that in October, and we'll start doing that twice a year. We did it in the past. We kind of quit, I think, after 2015, but I think that's a good way to get some education out to the public. And then we've really looked at our training that we do, both in-house and where we send people to. And kind of, I mentioned a few things on here that you can see, some ways that we're kind of gearing our training towards some de-escalation. And we've always done these things that are on here. We're just looking at maybe adding a little bit more to what we were already doing. These things aren't certainly new to our agency by any means: de-escalation, anti-bias, cultural diversity, communications 1, 2, and 3, cultural liaison deputy. Some other ones that we do is crisis intervention training. To me, communication is huge. That's why we send people to all 3 of these, 1, 2, and 3, so that our staff can just simply communicate with people when they're out there talking and taking calls from them and dealing with the public. So, like I said, we've always done these trainings. Actually, when we had the deputy in the jail who did the Native American caricature, and that group came in and asked us what our training was, I sent them all of our training that we go through, a description of what it is, and the terminal performance objectives, what we try to accomplish and through those courses, and they haven't responded back to me since I sent it to them. I don't think they realized as much, the amount of training that we do on these types of issues and topics. And so it's good. It's good to know that, that it kind of sufficed what they were looking at. But I'll be honest with you, I've been fortunate to work in the training field at the Sheriff's Office as a sergeant. I've been fortunate to been put on the Peace Officer Standards and Training Board that oversees all training for the state of North Dakota. And I've been fortunate to, in my 17 years of working with the SWAT team, work with agencies both nationally and internationally from different countries. And I can tell you or reassure you that all those entities that I've had an opportunity to train with and train, that the training that we have in this area, I feel, whether it's West Fargo, the Cass County Sheriff's Office, that we have really good training here, and our training is many times, from what I've seen, above the norm nationwide. And so I stand by what we're doing. I believe in it, and I believe in the law enforcement that we have around here. And so when they bring these things to us, I'm really not worried about what we're doing. Of course, we always want to get better. We always want to be forward thinking. So if we need to make some adjustments here and there to tweak our training with how our community is responding to things, we'll always do that. And certainly don't want to think that everything we're doing is the absolute end all. But I really do have faith in what we're doing in this area, in this community, and with our agencies. So I don't know if you guys have any other questions on that stuff at all. I would certainly answer.
Sheriff, maybe more of a comment than anything else. So thank you for saying what you just said, because that's what I was going to ask you to lead into. Because when I sat down with these folks, it was interesting because they went through their list of demands, their checklists. And this is the black light, this is the socialists, right? And they went through this whole list of to-dos, and it was fun sitting there because we just kind of sat there and said, we do that. We already do that. And we do that too. Oh, and we have 5 guys that do that. What they did was they took a list that must be typical of issues they're having in other places where we're seeing the bad things that are happening. And they just conflated them and said, well, they're doing them here too. Well, the interesting part is, as Sheriff Johnner just said, was no, we don't do any of that stuff. We have more accountability than our peers do. And I think you've heard me say with my wonderful experiences I've had nationally, along with what Sheriff Johnner just said, the wonderful experiences I've had nationally, I found out we're run pretty well here compared to our peers. So I think that's being shown as evidence as what's happening around the country. And like Sheriff Johnner said, no, we're not perfect, but it's fun sitting in a meeting when a bunch of people shake their finger at you, tell you how stupid you are and what you're not doing. And then you go through their checklist and you find out, no, we're doing that already. I'm sorry, you just don't know. Thanks, Sheriff.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's exactly it. I think that, and that was where that education thing that I talked about, just trying to get that education out that we're doing those things. Because very much like you said, when I got the list of demands, I went down and I'm like, well, we're already doing these things. We've been doing them for a long time. It's not like we just started. So, but certainly we always want to look at ways to get better and be forward thinking, and we'll always do that, of course. But yeah, it is nice to know. So with that was kind of all I had. I can open it up for questions at this point if anyone has any questions, or if anyone from my staff that was on the line here, if there's anything I missed that you guys would like to let the commission know about, certainly feel free to do that. Otherwise, I could take questions, or we could take questions as well.
No, I think we got about 15 minutes to get to our next meeting, so.
Sure. And I appreciate again, like I always mention, but I really do appreciate the relationship with all of you, and with Robert and Commissioner Shirley. I visit with them on a regular basis, and of course last year, my first year with Commissioner Steen, so it's always nice to be able to call you guys and bounce things off of you, and I appreciate that. So.
Well, and Sheriff, it's been just a real, I appreciate so much you and your entire department the last few months. It's been an interesting ride with all of these riots going on and potential threats. And I know there's been more than once that you've had to, be ready and be prepared to move with something, and whether or not it's come to fruition or not, it's stressful times for everyone.
Yep, and our staff is.
It.
Yeah, thank you. Our staff has been great. I know they've been working. A lot of them have been filling in, doing extra hours. But every time that I've asked for help that way to stage on a Saturday or a weekend, I've always gotten volunteers. So definitely appreciative of the staff and everyone helping out with it. So.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the extra effort that has had to take place at the jail to contain the COVID virus. That has really been a great effort as well. Yep.
Both Captain Probeg, Lieutenant Fuller have been doing a really good job with that, and of course all the rest of the staff. So they've been working through a lot of different situations that we haven't had before. So. All right. Well, with that then. Not hearing anything else. I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.